Hello and welcome. I'm Charles Pelton, contributing editor at CIO. I hope you've been enjoying the second day of our Future of Work Summit with a focus on AI. Joining me for this session is Jed Brown. He is Chief Product Officer at Firstup. Jed, welcome.
Thank you very much, Charles. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Great. Now, first of all, we have to get to know you. Now, I happen to have advanced intelligence. You live in Seattle. That's all I know about you. So what brought you to originally Social Chorus and now Firstup?
Yeah, great question. And to make a really long story short, I started out as an electrical and computer science engineer by trade and built my career into product and went into product by building extensions for Firefox for large enterprise. And that journey ultimately landed me for almost a decade at Microsoft and then Fuse, specifically targeting enterprise SaaS focused on productivity and communication. And so in that journey, what caught my eye was Social Course at the time. As you mentioned, now we are Firstup, was truly that maniacal focus on solving the problem that, to be frank, I saw in every single customer that I talked with in my previous roles. And that is customers and companies, everyone in general really struggles with communicating with their employees and helping each of those individuals understand how they're connected to the company and ultimately what their purpose and their role is in helping to drive the outcome for those companies. And so that purpose of solving that problem that I saw every single day talking with leaders, CIOs, CEOs is really exciting for me because those are the hardest problems and the most exciting and rewarding ones to solve for.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So your company is Firstup, and I would love to know the rationale behind that branding because, IT people now have to be branding people, IT people have to be marketers. So what are you trying to tell employers and organizations with that particular name?
Yeah, great question. And so, when we merged with Social Course, with Dynamic Signal and Social Course together last year, we went through an extensive renaming exercise. And as you allude to, we really wanted something that reflected our core belief. And that belief is people do their best work when they feel a sense of belonging in their role. And inherently, that helps them act like owners in what they do. And so the platform that we build ultimately is designed for leaders who understand that that value of human connection, which is our platform and name, is really built on that foundation. And that's putting people first lifts companies up. And so it became pretty natural for us to land on our name that we have today, which is Firstup.
So we've had, I think you'd agree, a pretty interesting 2 years. Now, how has this experience, especially with regard to putting people first, how has it changed in the last 2 years? And not only that, but how has it kind of continued a trend that we saw even before the pandemic?
Great question. For me, the pandemic, it really just reinforced what is important in the workplace. And what I mean by that are a few points. As people, as humans, we are very resilient. I think we tend to forget that. We complain a lot, but we endure and we really make the most and the best out of circumstances. And I honestly believe that's a superpower that is both underlooked and underleveraged. And so the second point kind of related to that is life is short and people in the midst of the pandemic have more opportunities than ever to do something meaningful with that life. We're seeing that in the job market right now, the number of people that are quitting, that are changing careers, that are reevaluating how much time they're spending with their family, the industries they're in. And so, as someone who I've been doing remote work, 3 years prior, pre-pandemic, to be frank, I was very skeptical at the time about how big businesses would respond to a more fluid and home-based workforce. Because their ability and capability to embrace change hadn't really been seen before at this scale. And to be frank, I've been pleasantly surprised by the amount of focus and adaptability that I've seen from even some of the oldest business out there. And so that, again, that the importance that we have found during this time, to your next question around, what was already changing. And to me, a big part of what was already changing is what I guess I'd call access. The consumerization, and I mean that in a positive sense, of easier access to the tools that we really need to do our jobs, tools that are more intuitive to pick up and to learn right away. And ultimately, what was hard before that we started to see even pre-pandemic, and it's really flourished since, is in the past, you were very tied to one vendor and had to compromise on quality to try to achieve good outcomes. And you would end up with kind of mediocre outcomes. Pre-pandemic and even now during, the rise in best-in-class tools working together to achieve really important workflows and use cases is better than ever. And to me, that's where that marriage of ease of use and best in class really have come together during this time.
You talk about best of class, you talk about ease of use, you talk about employee behavior and how organizations began to respond. Individuals like you or me, I've been a home-based worker for quite a long time. At the same time, as this accelerated these 2 years, as we've talked about, you had a parallel trend of acceleration in terms of how companies just viewed their technology infrastructure and viewed the purpose of technology. And this was, the now old saw of digital transformation. It seemed that so much more transformation was happening, really accelerated in these 2 years. Is that connected to what we've been talking about? Have you seen or perceived the same?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the crux of what I feel that you're touching on there is pre-pandemic, it was really only the most savvy companies out there that thought beyond the solutions that were presented in front of them by vendors. And really what I mean by that is, for me, to your point of what really makes successful digital transformations is when you start with the employee and what are the needs of the employees. And that understanding, having a very clear understanding of what it means to improve their experience, putting on their shoes, the solution becomes secondary because you're really driving to the crux of what are the outcomes that we need for the company and the employees, and that ultimately then leads you down the right path to the solution. I think Deloitte recently did a study around companies that have really embraced compelling workforce experiences. And the numbers were 22% higher engagement across their workers. The workers were 4 times more likely to stay on their jobs than other organizations. And they had a 12% greater customer satisfaction than other organizations. And that's meaningful. Those are really big outcomes for a company. And they're driven by thinking about what is needed to empower employees to really be at their best. As we talked about earlier, of really acting like owners, having that pride because they see that connection with what they do and how it impacts their own customers and the business that they're a part of.
That kind of connection between digitization, digital transformation, the digital experience, and how the role of the employee, the state of the employee. I mean, that brings us right to what you do at Firstup, and that is this platform that I know you provide. That's kind of a communications platform, a collaboration platform. Are we unifying these two trends in this solution that you offer?
Yes, yeah, great question. Because the as I mentioned a little bit earlier, what caught my eye, one, about this industry, two, Firstup in particular, is ultimately we're talking about how can we successfully help our employees and our companies during this digital transformation. And for me, there's 3 components there. I've kind of touched on a lot of them already, of communication. right? Effective internal communication is the way you drive trust and alignment for employees with your business objectives. Because if not, those employees they're left in the dark, right, on your digital initiatives. And it's really hard to not leave your strategy at risk on the table if you don't have buy-in. We talked a little bit about, during the pandemic, that connecting purpose, I think is what I'd call it, which is that how important it is for employees to understand that connection between their purpose and how that helps drive business goals ultimately for the companies. And then the third is that's all great, but it has to truly be wall to wall. If it's only pockets of your employees that are really leveraging those first two, it's not enough, because a company culture, productivity, engagement, that's truly wall to wall. And so it's
Wall to
that.
wall, that fascinates me, wall to wall. So wall to wall it's a whole unified approach. If you think about wall to wall, beginning to end, it's onboarding to leaving, it's the person at the edge to the person in the, it's everything.
Absolutely. It's the people in your office to the ones who perhaps in their whole career at the company have never even seen someone else who works at said company.
It's a unified engagement platform is really what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Driving that connectivity, communication, engagement that brings everyone together around those shared purposes. Because I think just in general as humans, one of the hardest things to do right is communicate, whether that's a father, whether that's family, whether that's, on a sports team. The most effective ones are the ones that are fantastic and work really hard with intention on really good communication, and work is no different. I'd argue it's even harder because we're a very random set of humans grouped together to go and accrue an outcome. And so it becomes even more important that there aren't misconceptions and that you're able to actually have that understanding cohesively throughout the whole team, which is your whole company.
Jed, as you know, our Future Work Summit is kind of split up into different days, and this particular day has a focus on AI powered automation. Can you talk about AI with regard to your guys' solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. Even the term to me is so fascinating for me, and this speaks a little bit to the way that we approach it. I think of intelligence or AI as magic. And what I mean by that is it's the magic that makes our experiences feel simple and personalized given a task that we have to do. And so, in a personalized, whether that's, helping me find a better route to go pick up my child in time, or to get to work, or get to the airport on time, to understanding what the airflow should be in a building because of the amount of people that we have in there. That connected tissue of when you don't even realize it's happening and things are just better and have been improved, to me, that's a huge part of the value of really intelligent systems, as they get out of the way to really help you and I do the even more important things. And so in our case, same applies to communication. Being able to reach out to you, Charles, to my CEO, to myself, to anyone out in the field on an airplane, reaching them proactively where they are at the most appropriate time in the context they have in a personalized way that brings what it is at a company we're trying to accrue to in the right moment in context, that becomes magical, because ultimately it will feel mundane. Like, of course it's that way. Of course I'm only getting the things that are most important to me right now, and I'm not distracted by all this other stuff, right? Truly cutting through the noise. And so to me, and we strive to do that, the best experiences out there are the ones that you're just so surprised when something just works and it just happened that way, and the insight was just there. You didn't have to ask for it. You didn't wreck your brain trying to figure out how to accrue to that. It just happened. And that's really what we strive to do with intelligent automation more than anything.
So a little bit more details about the platform, and maybe we can do kind of two things at the same time. People talk a lot today about self-service on the one hand. On the other hand, they talk a lot about, especially when it comes to the employee, as also the customer, but security and privacy and compliance. Can you kind of talk a little bit about the details underneath the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. And please feel free to course correct me too, if I diverge. So, I guess starting with self-service, and in particular, in general, lowering the barrier for us people, humans, to do things makes or breaks experiences. And so, if I think of just even intelligence and automation, a lot of stuff that we talked about, um, if it's hard to set up or even requires set up to have a really good workflow to tackle a really good use case that is going to bring amazing productivity to yourself or to your employees in the company, the moment that there is pain in doing that, or worse, you have to contract or find an expert to do that for you, the ROI really starts to drop off. And so, for us, that, automation being a part of intelligence, being a part of self-service, of bringing great defaults to you, personalizing experience, personalize even those what we'd mostly consider setup or first sign in or login or building out, your community or whatever those things are, making those as easy as possible. We know from the consumer world is how you really get deep engagement, because it kind of ties back to the moment you open something up for the first time or want to start something new for the first time. It's magical when it feels mostly, if not completely, already set up for you. And it's really just your confirmation.
And security and privacy?
I love that you bring those up, because as a human, those are absolutely vital, and showstoppers. Because at the end of the day, those three buckets exist for very specific reasons, which is to protect the business and protect us as very complex people that we are. And so, the base of any modern platform, our platform, we see as really starts with privacy, security, and ultimately in compliance also changes by industry, by location. So to me, those aren't features, those are base bones that a platform really needs to be built upon, in particular for, customers out there that have global employees, because it gets very complex very quickly, and a platform needs to have that and understand that.
It does. Jay, we don't have a ton of time left, but I'm wondering what the relationship is between effective communications, effective collaboration, and better employee retention, better recruitment possibilities.
Yeah, great question. I think ultimately, and we've touched on it on some of these, is the key driver for me between really good retention and recruitment is creating a culture in your business that drives really clear outcomes. Because when that happens, then people understand it and they can step up to do their best work. And ultimately, we keep talking about it, but ultimately that comes with clarity and communication. It doesn't happen magically. I really wish it would, but it takes intent, right? And it takes a really good unified platform and really good intent behind those who understand which ones are the really good platforms and how to achieve that. Because at the end of the day, it's change management. When you want to accrue and have a new outcome for your business, you're asking people to do something different. And we are a particularly unique species that we don't like change. And so it's very intentional.
As I said, we are running low on time. So in a minute, the crystal ball, you're sitting there, you're looking at the crystal ball. How is the future of work going to change? What do you predict?
Ooh, great question. And this is the hardest question, because I think the future of work is definitely in the eye of the beholder, in terms of a lot of opinions out there. If I was to summarize, it's a little bit what we just touched on, which is change. The constant trends, technology, tools, they all come and go. All of our businesses have to compete differently, if not every quarter, every week. And so the future of work for me is truly, how do you bring really good change management to your employees to compete better than anyone that you're up against, because you're able to help your employees understand that purpose, that direction, your goals, where you're going, and you're empowering them to do the thing you're paying them for. They joined your company to do something incredibly special, and empowering them to do those tools pushes them forward. And I think all the things that we touched on, privacy, compliance, all the way from AI and how you automate those experiences, I think that's where with really good communication and then turning those moments and those frictions into magical, accessible moments are when you really see those dials change. And to me, that's the future of work. We see that ultimate productivity because we're getting the most out of people using the new tools and technology, again, that continuously change to find that sweet spot for each of our individuals.
Well, a great conversation relating to the future of work. For our audience, a reminder, we have been talking with Jed Brown. He's the Chief Product Officer at Firstup. Jed, thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Really appreciate your time.